again here in northern Israel to talk to you about stuff. I'm going to talk to you about the Bitcoin and alt markets, what is happening in the crypto land, and specifically, what is it that's going to cause Bitcoin and other cryptos to explode in value? Well, they are going to explode in value against one thing in particular. Right? And that one thing in particular will then have a chain reaction because it's all mathematically tied together. And that one thing in particular is the US dollar. When the US dollar um, reaches a point where it takes a million of them to buy a single Bitcoin, you will have a situation where that US dollar becomes significantly less significant as a world reserve currency. Now, does that mean that the US economy is completely screwed and can do nothing to prevent having a terrible future economically? No, not at all. In fact, that's one of the reasons why, whether you like Trump or not, you should be grateful that he had the foresight to take the advice of his best economic advisors, whether you like them or not, and to declare that the US would establish a Bitcoin national reserve and a digital assets reserve, including other cryptos, Solana, Ethereum, XRP, Cardano. I'm sure eventually they'll probably add some more to those. Like once people begin to see the actual value of Litecoin, probably that will be included. But who knows? Maybe they'll never include it. Maybe it'll just be those five. But they do have those five, and they have a bunch of AI and other tech, digital assets that are, you know, assets that the U.S. wants to gather up, acquire, and hold as a kind of national reserve. As a national reserve, actually, right? And the reason this matters, even if you say, oh, it's just a presidential order, doesn't mean anything. Okay? The fact that there's even an executive order about it does actually mean something. Why? Because that is the kind of executive order that, even though it may face political opposition from his opposing party for now, you'll notice that there are an increasing number of even Democrats who are pro-Bitcoin and pro-crypto. Because obviously, the wealthy, the smart money, they know how to make money, and they're going to keep doing that. They're not just going to stop because of a presidential order or some political opposition to it. Right? They do. Oh. In there. Sometimes these live streams get interrupted for a few seconds by telecom stuff. Anyway, so think about it. When the US dollar is a thing that requires a million of them to buy a singular Bitcoin, and there's only 21 million Bitcoin that can ever exist, but we know, given all the amount of lost Bitcoins, who knows, maybe it's 18 million that actually exist or are accessible. Maybe it's 17, 16, 15 million. We don't actually know the complete exact number, but we know it's millions, at least a few million Bitcoins are basically inaccessible, right? At least around 15%, 12.5, 15, whatever, 14%, 15%, at least 15% of all Bitcoin is inaccessible. And the probability is it's closer to 20%. But let's just say 15%, okay? 15% of all Bitcoin are not accessible. So the accessible ones cost $1 million a piece. So 18 million, let's just say. Okay, Bitcoins cost $1 million a piece. Do the math. Right? What's 18 million times $1 million? You start to see some significant monies there. Is that enough to replace the US dollar? No, it's not. 18 million coins, if the coins were worth $1 a piece, it would be worth $18 million market cap. Clearly not enough. 18 million coins times $10, 180 million. 18 coins times $100, 1.8 billion. 18 million times 10x that, 18 billion, and so on and so forth. You get to $1 million. You see that the market cap of those 18 million coins is pretty staggering, right? But would that be enough to actually replace the dollar entirely? No, probably not. Why? Well, because first of all, it's not all the money. It's not even near all the money, considering all the other things that money goes into: gold, real estate, bonds, commodities, etc. Fixed income, or FX, right? Foreign exchange, equities, etc. So it's nowhere near all the money, right? Or even the majority of it. But if it gets to 10 million, why wouldn't it go to 20? I mean, if it gets to $1 million, sorry, why wouldn't it go to 10 or 20? It's made all these multiples in such a short time. And if people still believe it has value and there continues to be adoption, remember, when people say, oh, Bitcoin means nothing, because all it is people just believe it has value, but it doesn't actually do anything. Let me remind you, your US dollar is also just a perception of value. It also doesn't do anything. In fact, it does less than Bitcoin. Bitcoin, you can argue, does a whole lot more. Not even argue. Bitcoin factually does a whole lot more in its usefulness than a US dollar. Yes, you can buy stuff with US dollars at more places at the moment. But imagine a world where you have to take in $1 million to pay for your lunch, or to pay for your, groceries for the week, or whatever it might be, versus pay like 0.01 Bitcoin or something, or whatever it might be. 0.00001 Bitcoin, right? Who knows? The point is, like, if you can't imagine a world where people have to literally cart around huge masses of cash just to buy stuff, well, first of all, okay, we are in 2025, and sure, Americans mostly use digital money on their credit cards these days. Credit cards, debit cards, tap to pay, all that stuff, right? But there still is a chunk of people just that use cash for things, especially buying like certain items. Not everybody uses electronic money all the time. I know increasingly people do, but why is that? That's because the electronic money that people are used to using is all centralized and based on the credit system of the credit-based economy, which is the debt-based economy, right? It's not really credit, it's actually debt. And that's the reason why the proponents of that economy love it so much. And they are the people who oppose crypto, nothing to do with crypto, because they obviously don't want to lose all the money they get thanks to the debt-based system that it currently exists, right? There's a reason for that. There's a reason that the people who are in the money, so to speak, don't want to give that up, right? I mean, logically, if you had all the power and all the money, would you oppose something that comes along and says, hey, I'm going to disrupt you, and I'm going to make a better money system, even if it also ends up in the hands of the people with all the money, which is exactly why the people with all the money are doing everything they possibly can to buy up all of the crypto. And they've been doing that for many years. And we've seen, of course, people like Jamie Dimon lie through his teeth for many years. People said, oh, he would never be, he's not such an evil man, he's not a liar, he's just a professional, this and that. No, he's also a liar. Yeah, he may be a consummate professional banker, yeah, and making money is his job, yeah, but that doesn't mean he's not a liar. With 100% certainty, he is. We know for a fact that he told people very publicly, if you buy any of my traders who buys crypto, will be fired. Like, he was very blatant about that. He wasn't hiding it from anyone. It wasn't some conspiracy. He openly said it. Right? Anybody who buys crypto, who works at JP Morgan, any traders trading crypto, specifically Bitcoin, would be shown the door. Meanwhile, he said that at the same time as he launched a crypto trading desk. Like, he was building a crypto trading desk at JP Morgan. So they were buying as much crypto as they possibly could get their grubby little hands on to set up a crypto trading desk. This was not by accident. This is not a mistake. They knew what they were doing. They were misleading people completely in order to get more people away from crypto while they bought as much as they could at the cheaper prices. Because they knew back then, in 2017 already, they knew this stuff is the future of finance. They're not dummies. They work at JP Morgan, for God's sake. And they're traders. They know what they're doing. If you're a trader at JP Morgan and you've been there for, I don't know, more than your training period, and you actually got a job there doing it, like they kept you on, that says something about you. It says you kind of know what you're doing when it comes to trading. How do I know this? Well, I know traders at JP Morgan and elsewhere. And I can tell you, they're not dummies. You have to know a thing. You know, you need to be the brightest candle in the candelabra. Is that even an expression? I don't know. Seems appropriate. But you do need to have working brain cells to be able to make smart decisions so you don't lose the company money. Because if there's one thing they do not accept at their company, it's continuously losing money. Now, if you lose trades here and there, sure, whatever, that happens to everyone. But if you are a losing trader overall with their money, yeah, they don't like that. They will end that practice very quickly, as they do whenever they say thank you to people who tried and did not succeed and are shown the proverbial door as a result. But look, there are still going to be people who will believe that crypto is just a bunch of whatever, bad stuff. And wow, nice dragonflies, reds and blues all over the place. There are going to be people who still think, no matter what, oh, this crypto thing is a scam. This Bitcoin thing is a scam. There's no value to it. Listen, there are scams that have operated for years. Okay, that's true. But it's kind of hard when your scam is so public and there is no owner of all of it. There is no centralized controller of the entire protocol. There is no one source that runs this thing. This isn't a Bernie Madoff, right? Or a Ponzi. This is nothing like that. This is literally just a mathematical protocol that people ascribe a certain value to because it allows people to send and receive values uninhibited. No middleman, no bank, no government, no one in between the sender and the recipient. There's just the sender and the recipient. Now, of course, there are intermediary services that have, shall we say, changed the ethos of Bitcoin, made it very difficult or even impossible for some people to send and receive their funds without a middleman. Why? Because they use third-party services and they trust them. Even though I continually tell people, do not trust the third-party services. They're not your friend. They're there to make money. And if that costs you some money sometimes, or even in general, so be it. You're going to be the first one they take out. Why? Well, because you're using a business that's promising to keep your money safe, but they don't actually have to. First of all, it's still an unregulated space for the most part. Yes, there are now some laws and regulations about stablecoins and about crypto, thanks to the Genius Act, but it's still overall an unregulated market. It's still overall a market that is largely, you know, the Wild West. And, you know, again, even if there are regulations in the US, it's kind of hard to crack down on companies that could be in the US today and could be in the Far East tomorrow, or it could be in Australia, or it could be anywhere on Earth. It could be floating on a boat somewhere and declaring themselves, you know, in international waters. Right? And that's a whole different set of problems and issues. And I mean, look at even Coinbase, a regulated company in the United States, and they're not running from the US. They're staying in the US because they know the value and importance of this to the US economy, and they appreciate that, and they want to build a strong US company in the crypto space. Who knows? Maybe their exit is they want to sell out to the government. We don't know. But, you know, or some huge investor or some other big company, maybe Coinbase will sell out the strategy at some point in the future. We don't know. Right? What we do know is that Coinbase has a Web3 wallet, and it has recently been shut off. And anybody who forgot about their assets in that wallet are now like scrambling for ways to get their assets out of it. Because who knows, maybe you opened up a Web3 wallet on Coinbase some time ago when they first offered it, and you put something in there, and you just kind of forgot about it because it never got any traction. It was just like a whatever. You stuck some NFTs in there, maybe you stuck some Bitcoins in there, or some Litecoins, or some Ethereum, or whatever, Solana, and you just left it in there, and you just forgot. And now all of a sudden you can't get into it. And there's a regulated company in charge of that, of having made that happen. They didn't give you like 5 years to get your stuff out and send out emails and warnings and messages to people every month. No, they just shut it down. Right? They just decided one day, yeah, we're getting into this thing. And very shortly afterwards, it was gone. Right? And this was after a big, huge hype launch where it made a lot of noise, a big splash to get it out the door, to get people to be using it as much as possible. It's very possible that people who were either new to the space or getting into it a little bit before, but not much, or new to the whole Web3 thing within the space, you know, like they got into it, they forgot they even had the damn thing, and it has actual values in there, it has actual valuables, right? Things that you can trade, things that are worth money, things that you can buy and sell. And they just forgot about it because whatever, busy year, things happen. Like it's not that unusual for something like that to happen, actually. It's really, really not that unusual if you think about it, right? Like it's entirely probable that many people who had that wallet, or you know, a not insignificant number of people who had that wallet, basically forgot they even had one, or didn't pay any attention to it, and certainly didn't notice every bleeping PR news announcement from, you know, Coinbase's PR department. But now they're stuck, right? Now they can't get to their wallets. I mean, sure, maybe there's some way for them to get in. Maybe there's some, you know, way that Coinbase will extend that for them or whatever. But, you know, there was a cutoff date already. And if you weren't around, if you were offline, if you were hiking the world for 5 years, and you just assumed that your money was safe inside of the Coinbase wallet because it's Coinbase. Why wouldn't it be? Your Bitcoins have been safe there for 10 years. Why wouldn't your Web3 stuff be safe there too? And all of a sudden you find out, yeah, no, your Web3 stuff on Coinbase, you can't even get to it. There could be people right now who are off somewhere doing something and they have no idea this has even happened. I'm guessing that's probably the case, because they have a lot of users. When you have millions and millions of customers, there's a very high probability that they're not all doing the same thing, and they have very different schedules and lives. So, yeah, that's my take on that. Anyway, if you want to learn more about trading specifically, and not just Bitcoin, but you know what? I'll actually probably keep this going. Give me a minute. So at the moment, the Bitcoin is worth 100,000 and change, right? 100, what is it? 115,000 right now, something like that. Well, that 115,000 may seem like a lot, but it's not going to be that much by comparison, or that much by comparison to where it could be coming years if there is a hyper-growth situation where all of a sudden Bitcoin isn't worth $1 million. It's going to be worth tens of millions, and potentially even 100 million. If it gets to the point where it is worth 100 million, well, then that actually does radically change the economics of the world reserve currency, etc. Right? Because at that point, you're not just the biggest currency. At that point, you are the dominating currency, and it would be definitely a world reserve at that point. Hold on one second, folks. Give me a minute. Let me see if I can continue this thing. I think I can. Hold on a second. Joining me a second. Hold on. Yeah. So again, the notion of Bitcoin going to 200 million may sound completely ludicrous right now, when it's not even at $1 million. It's not even at 150K. But again, you got to remember, this asset has delivered more than 20 billion% gains in 16 years. And if you want to tell me that's it, that's topped out, it can't get more than that, I'll put you to the fact that it has been around for 16 years, which means there's a probability that it's going to be around for at least another 16 years. If you're not familiar with that, go check it out. See, math concept about the duration of things, the lifespan, the life cycle of things, right? Which indicates that when something is around, for every day something is around, there's a decent probability it will be around for an extra day, right? Of course, it will get to a point where it reaches a half-life, and then that's no longer the case. It begins to diminish, right? But the theory, especially when it comes to business and mathematical principles or protocols, is that once this thing that is inanimate and isn't a living person, once it's in motion, It's not just going to suddenly die without reason. Right? It takes some effort for things to stop working after they are running very nicely. So, as a result of that, it is very probable that we will see Bitcoin lasting, like I said, for at least another 16 years, if not more. And if it's already gone up 20 billion% in the first 16 years, just imagine what it can do in the next 16 years. Can it go from 100,000 to 1 million? Well, that's just 10x. That's kind of a no-brainer, given how fast it's grown and given how tiny the market still is in terms of sheer number of users. Yes, there are, maybe 100 million people, maybe 200-300 million people who have some crypto. Maybe 50 to 100 million of them have some Bitcoin. But that doesn't mean that it's a saturated market. There's 8 billion people on the planet. If there's only 100 million people actually using Bitcoin, not even using it, holding it, right? How many are actually using it? It's a tiny number, right? It's a tiny, tiny number. So the supposition that there's just going to be no more growth because supposedly the growth is dead, when there's literally no evidence for that whatsoever. And there's plenty of evidence to suggest it's going to keep growing because it keeps growing in terms of user base. Like we see new wallets being created every day. Sure, many of them are created by people who already use it, but tons of them are by people who are new to it. Right? Just like every day, there's still people who sign up for email for the first time. Like every day, there's new people joining the internet, and the internet isn't used by literally everyone because there are people who don't even have phones and who never had a smartphone and who never had a phone capable of sending SMS. Those people do still exist. Yes, they are far and few in between relative to the number of people who do have access to technology, but not the entire world is online. In fact, it's not even close. Yes, a massive number of people are online, but it's not the entire world. Right? We still have billions of people who are not online. Billions. Right? So yeah, we have a digital economy. Yeah, we have technology out the wazoo. But there's still billions of people who don't. Which means that there's still a massive market for potential growth. Like, massive, right? We are maybe not even 1%. But let's sure, whatever. You know what? Maybe it doesn't matter. Like, 100 million is 10% of a billion, right? So 100 million is 1% of 10 billion. Okay, so yeah, we don't have we have a little more than 1%. We have a little more than what is it? We have 100 million out of a billion would be 10%, right? But out of 8 billion, it's barely more than 1%. What is it, like 1.25%, something like that, right? So 1.25% of the planet even holds any Bitcoin. Maybe it's slightly more. Maybe at this point, 2%, because that might be just, I think it's, that is actually total numbers. So yeah, 1.5%, 1.25%. Right, think about it. If there's like we know if there's fixed supply,